I'm Dr. Christy, and this is Climbing Fish Parenting, practical parenting strategies in 20 minutes or less. I'm a psychologist and behavior analyst, and I work with exhausted, overwhelmed parents who feel like they've tried everything and nothing works. If you're listening to this while folding the laundry, hiding in your car, or wishing bedtime would just end already, you're in the right place. Today, we're talking about the myth of doing it all and what sustainable parenting actually looks like when you're raising a child who's wired differently. By the end of this episode, you'll know exactly what to stop doing, what actually matters, and how to build a parenting approach you can maintain for the long haul without burning out. Ready to transform your parenting journey? Let's dive in. I need to start with something that might sting a little. If you're trying to do it all as a parent of a child who experiences the world differently, whether they have ADHD, autism, anxiety, sensory sensitivities, or they're just wired in a way that makes typical parenting strategies fall flat, you are setting yourself up to fail. Not because you're not capable enough, but because doing it all is literally impossible given the demands you're managing. And here's what makes this so insidious. Our culture has sold you on a vision of what good parenting looks like that was designed for families with kids whose brains work in more typical ways. Homemade lunches, organized playrooms, consistent bedtime routines, kids who participate in activities, parents who stay patient and calm, a clean house, quality time, self-care. But when you're parenting a child who needs constant co-regulation, who has a nervous system that can't handle typical demands, who requires accommodations and advocacy and translation work all day long, that vision isn't just hard to achieve, it's genuinely impossible. And every time you try to meet that standard, you're not building sustainable parenting. You're sprinting towards burnout. So let's talk about what sustainable parenting actually looks like. The kind you can maintain, not just this month, but for years. Because remember, you're running a marathon, not a sprint. Here's the problem. You're operating from a scarcity model. Here's what I see constantly. Parents trying to do everything because they believe if they just work harder, sacrifice more, optimize better, they can meet all of their child's needs and maintain the household and stay emotionally regulated and keep everyone fed, and advocate at school, and maintain relationships, and take care of themselves. That's not a parenting strategy. That's a recipe for collapse. You're operating from what I call a scarcity model, the belief that there's not enough of you to go around, so you have to hustle harder and squeeze more out of every moment. You convince yourself that if you're efficient enough, you can fit it all in. But here's what research on caregiver stress tells us. Parents of children with developmental differences experience chronic stress levels comparable to combat soldiers. Your cortisol, your stress hormone, stays elevated for hours or days at a time. Your nervous system never fully comes down from high alert. And when you're in that state, your capacity genuinely shrinks. You have less cognitive bandwidth for decision-making, less emotional bandwidth for regulation, less physical energy for basic tasks. So the harder you try to do it all, the less capacity you actually have. You're not failing because you're not trying hard enough. You're failing because the goal itself is impossible, given the physiological reality of what you're managing. The fix? You need to shift to what I call a triage model of parenting. And that starts with getting brutally honest about what actually matters. Step 1. Identify your non-negotiables. There should be fewer than you think. Right now, I want you to think about everything you believe you should be doing as a parent. Everything on your mental to-do list. All the standards you're trying to meet. Now here's the critical question. What would you absolutely have to keep doing if you only had 60% of your current capacity? Not 100%, not even 80%, 60%. Because here's the truth. On hard days, and when you're parenting a child who's wired differently, you have a lot of hard days. You might only have 60% capacity, maybe less. And if your parenting approach only works when you're operating at 100%, it's not sustainable. So what are your actual non-negotiables? And I mean actual, not what you think you should prioritize, not what other parents prioritize. What genuinely cannot be dropped without significant harm to your child's well-being or development. For most parents I work with, the real non-negotiables are something like kids are physically safe, kids are fed. Note, not gourmet meals, not balanced nutrition every single day. Fed. Your child's most critical co-regulation needs are met. Medication is given consistently, if applicable. Major medical or therapy appointments happen. Notice what's not on that list? A clean house, homemade meals, organized systems, extracurricular activities, consistent bedtimes every single night, arts and crafts, educational enrichment, thank you notes, any of the 1,000 things you think you should be doing. I'm not saying those things have no value. I'm saying that they're not non-negotiables. And if you're trying to do them while running on empty, you're stealing energy from the things that actually matter. Here's what's critical to understand. Your child doesn't need you to do everything. They need you to show up regulated enough to co-regulate with them when their nervous system crashes. They need you to have enough bandwidth to make good decisions about their actual needs. They need you to be not so depleted that you're snapping at them, or crying in your car, or lying awake at night drowning in guilt. Everything else? Negotiable. The fix? Write down your real non-negotiables, just the true essentials. Then give yourself explicit permission to let everything else be good enough, or not happen at all on days when your capacity is low. Step 2. Audit your shoulds and drop the ones that only exist because of other people's expectations. Here's a question I ask every parent I work with. What would you drop if absolutely no one was watching or judging? The answers are incredibly revealing. I'd stop making elaborate lunches. I'd let my kid wear the same shirt 3 days in a row. I'd skip the birthday party. I'd order pizza 4 nights a week. I'd let my kid watch more screen time. I'd stop volunteering at school. Now here's my follow-up question. Why aren't you dropping those things right now? Almost always, the answer is some version of, because people would judge me, because I'd feel like a bad parent, because everyone else seems to manage it. Let me be very clear. If the only reason you're doing something is to avoid judgment or because you think you should, and it's draining your already limited capacity, drop it immediately. Your child doesn't need you to perform good parenting for an audience. They need you to have enough energy to actually parent them. Here's what research shows. Parental stress directly impacts children's stress levels and behavioral regulation. When you're chronically depleted, your child feels that. Your nervous system communicates with theirs. If you're constantly in a state of overwhelm trying to meet standards that don't actually matter, your child experiences more dysregulation, not less. So those elaborate lunches you're packing while running on fumes, your child would genuinely be better off with a simple lunch packed by a parent who has more bandwidth left for connection and co-regulation. Ask yourself, is this directly supporting my child's core needs or my capacity to meet those needs? If the answer is no, stop doing it. Seriously, give yourself permission to just stop. Step 3. Build in buffers, or accept that things will break. Here's something parents of kids who are wired differently learn the hard way. Tight schedules break. Plans fall apart. What worked yesterday might not work today. You can't pack your day at 100% capacity and expect it to hold. But most parents keep trying to optimize every minute. They schedule back-to-back activities. They build routines that require everything to go smoothly. They create systems that only work if their child cooperates fully and nothing unexpected happens. And then they're shocked when it all falls apart, which it does, constantly. And they feel like failures. Here's what I need you to know. You're not failing at execution. You're failing at planning. You're planning for a child whose brain works typically, and then acting surprised when your child, whose brain works differently, can't meet those expectations. Sustainable parenting requires buffers, space for things to go wrong, margin for the unexpected, room for your child to have a hard day without your entire system collapsing. What does this look like practically? If your child needs to leave the house at 9, you start getting ready at 7:30, not 8:30. Because transitions are hard and something will go wrong. You don't schedule anything important after school because your child's nervous system is depleted and they need downtime, not more demands. You build in a nothing day every week, a day with no scheduled activities, no social obligations, no ambitious plans, just space. You keep emergency meals in the freezer for nights when cooking feels impossible. You have backup clothing options for days when sensory needs shift. You protect pockets of unstructured time so you're not constantly managing transitions. Does this feel like lowering the bar? Maybe. But here's what I want you to understand. The bar you're trying to meet wasn't designed for your family. It was designed for families with kids whose brains require less support, less co-regulation, less accommodation. You're not lowering the bar. You're setting a bar that's actually appropriate for your child's needs and your capacity. That's not failure. That's wisdom. Look at your typical week and ask yourself, where am I packed too tight? Where is there no room for things to go wrong? Then deliberately build in buffers. More time, fewer commitments, space to breathe. Step 4. Embrace seasons of parenting. Here's something that will either relieve you or make you angry. Sustainable parenting means accepting that not every season of your parenting journey is going to look the same. Some seasons you're in survival mode. Some seasons you have a little more capacity for extras. And that's not only okay, it's necessary. Parents of kids who are wired differently often face periods of intense demand. Maybe your child is going through a developmental leap and their regulation is shot. Maybe you're in the middle of fighting for services at school. Maybe medication changes are making everything harder. Maybe your own capacity is depleted because of work stress or health issues or just the accumulated weight of months of chronic stress. During those seasons, your job is survival. Keep your non-negotiables covered. Let everything else go. Don't feel guilty about it. Don't apologize for it. Don't compare yourself to what you were doing 6 months ago or what you hope to do 6 months from now. This is the season you're in, and meeting your child's needs in this season might look completely different than it did before or will in the future. But here's what I see constantly. Parents feeling like they have to maintain the same standards all the time. They had a good month where they cooked healthy dinners and stayed patient and kept the house reasonably clean, and now they think that's the baseline they need to maintain forever. No, that was a season. Maybe you'll have another season like that. Maybe you won't. But trying to replicate a high-capacity season when you're in a low-capacity season is how you burn out. The fix? Name the season you're in right now, out loud. This is a survival season. This is a rebuilding season. This is a season where we're just trying to get through the school year. Then adjust your expectations accordingly. What's appropriate for this season? Not what you wish you could do or what you did before or what you see other parents doing. What can you actually sustain right now? And here's the most important part. Trust that seasons change. This hard season won't last forever. But if you burn yourself out trying to do more than this season allows, you might not have anything left when a different season comes. Step 5. Let go of the guilt. Here's the final piece, and it might be the hardest. You have to let go of the guilt about not doing it all. The guilt about ordering takeout again. The guilt about your child watching more screens than you think they should. The guilt about not doing enough sensory activities or educational enrichment or quality time. The guilt about feeling resentful. The guilt about not being the parent you imagined you'd be. That guilt, it's not motivating you to do better. It's just draining energy you desperately need for actual parenting. Here's what I need you to understand. Guilt is an emotion that signals we've violated our own values. But if you're feeling guilty about things that genuinely don't matter for your child's well-being, like whether dinner came from a box or whether you did a craft project this week, that's not real guilt. That's shame dressed up as guilt. And shame serves no one. Your child doesn't need a perfect parent. Research is very clear on this. What children need is a parent who is emotionally available, reasonably consistent, and capable of co-regulating with them when they're dysregulated. That's it. They don't need homemade organic meals. They don't need Pinterest-worthy birthday parties. They don't need a parent who never makes mistakes or never feels overwhelmed or never takes shortcuts. In fact, research on good enough parenting, a concept from psychologist Donald Winnicott, shows that children actually develop better when parents are imperfect. Because when you're a good enough parent, rather than trying to be perfect, you're modeling for your child that humans make mistakes, that we can't do everything, that it's okay to have limits. You're teaching them that worthiness isn't contingent on performance. And for a child who's wired differently, who will spend their whole life in a world that often judges them for not meeting typical standards, that might be the most valuable lesson you can teach. Every time you feel guilt creeping in about something you're not doing, ask yourself, is this guilt pointing me towards something that genuinely matters for my child's well-being? Or is this guilt just telling me I'm not meeting an arbitrary standard? If it's the latter, acknowledge the feeling, then consciously let it go. You can literally say out loud, I notice I'm feeling guilty about ordering pizza again. That guilt isn't serving me or my child. I'm letting it go. Will the guilt come back? Probably. But every time you practice letting it go, you're retraining your brain. You're building a new pattern. And over time, the guilt loses its power. What sustainable parenting actually looks like. So what does all of this add up to? What does sustainable parenting actually look like when you're raising a child who's wired differently? It looks like keeping your non-negotiables covered and being okay with everything else being good enough or not happening at all. It looks like adjusting your expectations based on your capacity in this season, not what you did 6 months ago or what you hope to do 6 months from now. It looks like building buffers into your schedule so when things go wrong, and they will, your whole system doesn't collapse. It looks like dropping the activities, standards, and obligations that only exist because you think you should do them or because you're worried about judgment. It looks like letting go of guilt about not being perfect and instead focusing your energy on being present. It also looks like accepting that some days you're at 60% capacity, and that's okay, because you've built a parenting approach that works at 60%, not just at 100%. Does this feel like lowering the bar? Maybe, but here's what I want you to hear. The bar you've been trying to reach was never designed for you. It was designed for parents with more capacity and kids with fewer needs. You're not lowering the bar. You're setting a bar that's actually reachable. And when you do that, you stop sprinting toward burnout and start building something you can sustain for the long haul. Your child doesn't need you to do it all. They need you to show up, regulated, present, and with enough left in your tank to meet their actual needs. Everything else is negotiable. All right, that's it for today. Sustainable parenting when you're raising a child who's wired differently means identifying your real non-negotiables, auditing your shoulds, building in buffers, embracing seasons, and letting go of guilt that serves no one. The goal isn't perfection. It's building a parenting approach you can maintain for years without burning out. Because you're running a marathon, and marathon runners don't sprint the whole way. If this was helpful, hit subscribe so next week's episode shows up automatically. And if you haven't already, head to my website at www.climbingfishparenting.com to sign up for my newsletter. Every newsletter includes a swim strategy, a specific research-backed technique to help you navigate the week ahead. It's exclusive to the newsletter, so you won't hear it in the podcast or see it on social media. This week's swim strategy is a specific question that will help you figure out what to drop immediately. That strategy I just gave you, it's the whole climbing fish philosophy in action. There's a quote, everybody's a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it's stupid. Your kid isn't broken. Your parenting isn't broken. Sometimes we're just asking our fish to climb trees. That's what we fix here. I'm Dr. Christy, and I'll see you next week.